In this story from Human Events, they write, many millennial socialists, they put it in quotes, aren't socialists. The majority of young people who call themselves socialists do not understand socialism. That's true. I've talked to some of my friends. I have a friend who said that she was a democratic socialist. And I started asking her some questions. I said, first, let me try and figure out where you are politically. Do you believe that if you do work, you should be allowed to keep the fruits of that labor for yourself? And she said, yes. I said, congratulations, you're not a socialist. And she was confused by this. She is actually more likely a social democrat, somebody who believes in a capitalist system, but a strong welfare state. But she insisted, no, I am. And I said, okay, do you think if you do work, the product of your work should go into a pool controlled by a collective that determines who gets that resource? And she was like, no, I did the work. It's mine. Like, if you grow a stalk, like some wheat, do you think you should be allowed to eat that? And she said, yes. Congratulations, you're a capitalist. The problem these people have isn't socialism or capitalism. It's crony corruption. It is corporatism. It is elitism. It is not capitalism in and of itself. The idea of capitalism, what it really is the right of the individual to own private property. Now, when I ask them about this, they change the narrative and they change the definition. They now differentiate between private property and personal property, which makes no sense. Because where do you draw the line? So this is what they say when you ask about private property. They say, there's a difference between you personally owning a piece of property like your shoes and private property like a building. And I say, okay, at what point does personal property become private property? Like, is your car personal property? And they say, oh, well, yeah, like the car is yours. You drive it, you park it. That's different. I say, okay, what about a tractor? But a tractor is part of the means of production. Well, a tractor, okay, what if I take a car and I modify it to be able to plow? Is it now private property? Then there's a bigger question. What if I offer as an individual to do work for my neighbor to like mow their lawn in exchange for a resource? Am I working for them as a wage slave, or am I generating a profit? The problem with their ideas is scale. Their ideas don't have a cohesive structure. It makes no sense. Because the reality is, socialism is very easily defined as the public ownership of all property. It doesn't matter if it's a comb. It doesn't matter if it's your shoes. There is no distinction between personal and private. Now, of course, they can argue, well, we'll have to draw those lines. Great. An arbitrary organization of individuals who are doing jazz hands are going to figure out what you can and can't own. Congratulations. Welcome to authoritarianism. What you're proposing makes no sense, and you're not really a socialist. Let's read the story. Before we do, make sure you go over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are multiple ways you can donate: physical address, crypto, PayPal, or just share the video, help support the channel, because YouTube is deranking my content. And yes, I can see the number is declining, but you know what? I'll keep on keeping on for the time being. Let's read. Human Events writes, according to a new poll, nearly 40% of college students have a favorable opinion of socialism. Polls like this astound older Americans who witnessed the economic stagnation and human atrocities in socialist regimes during the 20th century. Because most millennials we know seem like good people, how could so many good young people favor such an awful system? This new poll sheds some light on this question, and the light it sheds is consistent with what I learned while researching a new book on socialism when I attend the largest gathering of self-identified socialists in the United States. Support for socialism is unevenly distributed across majors. Support is greatest among the majors least likely to study how economic systems function. 78% of philosophy majors, 64% of anthropology majors, and 58% of English majors hold favorable views of socialism. Yet in the disciplines most likely to study how economic systems function, economics and finance, 61% and 63% of students respectively hold unfavorable views of socialism. Congratulations! They've read a book on economics. It's funny because Ocasio-Cortez apparently has like an economics degree or like an international relations degree too. And she doesn't seem to understand that $21 trillion in an accounting error is not spendable money. This is the craziest thing to me. And this is a really good example of why millennials think they know what socialism is. They grew up, listen, This is important. I tried hiring someone once who was institutionalized their whole life. And I don't mean in a mental institution, I mean an educational institution. They didn't finish school until they were like 24. They had no concept of influx, income, and outgoing resources. They had no understanding of maintaining a system of revenue, of growth, what profit really meant. I tried to explain these things to them. They don't get it. The DSA holds up signs saying abolish profit. So you're advocating for slavery, like in that sense. Profit is the money you earn as an individual. Now, of course, I understand they're actually arguing against the idea of a major corporation making money on top of what they already pay people. But the individual who sells their labor is making a personal profit too. It doesn't change, like the idea of profit is beyond your costs, what you earn. People who work in offices accrue costs, and then they get a wage. The money they make on top of what it costs them to work is their profit. So let me explain something to the socialists. If I own a car and I drive my car to work, guess what? I have to pay for gas. I have to pay for the car. That's coming out of my pocket. The money they pay on top, minus the amount it costs me to maintain that job, is my profit. If you are working a job that is paying you less than you need to actually work that job, congratulations, you're in the red. It's no different from an individual to a business. But for some reason, millennials seem to think money grows on trees. They seem to think that businesses should be snapped into existence and the government should issue money to the various businesses to then pay their staff. It's why we constantly see complaints at these woke media companies. We should get paid more. You realize your company doesn't generate revenue, right? If you don't get money from people, how will they pay money to other people? They seem to think money just appears. Well, it doesn't. Let's read on. The writer says, in my teaching experience, only a small percentage of students correctly identify socialism as an economic system that abolishes private property in the major factors of production and replaces it with collective ownership. This was true of the millennial socialists I met at the conference last year. A large portion of self-identified socialists didn't identify their version of socialism with abolishing private property and replacing it with collective ownership and central planning. Instead, they adopted the socialist label while simply taking positions to the left of the Democratic Party on a wide variety of political issues. I asked many young people why they were there. One young woman told me the urgency is because Trump, immigration rights, Black Lives Matter, indigenous rights. Her answer was typical. Others told me it was because of the environment, gender rights, abortion, or LGBT rights. I was told that uncompromising socialism is fully committed to systematic change and ending oppression of all types. That has nothing to do with the economy. That has to do with societal factors, which can change irrespective of the economy. And then they start pushing the narrative that, no, you can't because capitalism is white supremacy. And congratulations, that's exactly what we see with the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal pushed by Ocasio-Cortez and Saikat Chakrabarti is mostly about socialist policy. I'm not making that up. That's actually coming, that's me giving my opinion. Saikat Chakrabarti said the Green New Deal initially wasn't about the climate at all. It was about changing the economy. There you have it. They're using environmentalism as a Trojan horse to institute economic policy. They're using identity politics as a Trojan horse to institute economic policy. Socialism can be racist. It doesn't make sense. And the people who are supporting it are doing it based on civil rights issues. That makes no sense. Let's read on. He writes, the answers the attendees gave were also representative of the formal conference sessions. Few sessions had anything to do with how to organize a socialist economic and political system. And the few sessions that did confused things more than they illuminated them. The speakers on the session on Korea failed to mention that North Korea has a socialist economic system, while South Korea's system is based on private property and free enterprise. Instead, we were told that suffering in North Korea has been caused by imperialism. He goes on to say, young people who identify with real socialism don't understand the connection between economic freedoms and political freedoms. They seem to think it was a historical accident that every country that ever replaced private property with collective ownership became a totalitarian hell. But centrally planned socialist economic systems necessarily concentrate economic power in the hands of government officials and planners. With such power, they can't hope to run things. Yet this same power limits citizens' ability to freely exercise their political power when they became dissatisfied with the government. There are two kinds of power in a political sense. There's the government and there's the corporations. Growing up, I saw the right saying government bad and the left saying corporations bad. In reality, they're two massive power structures that are centralizing and growing. The government has power by force. They can shut down any corporation they want within reason, because if the government oversteps its boundaries, confidence will be lost in the government, and the government is made up of confidence. Corporations use economic power to slowly grow. Eventually, they become very large, and in reality, they're both part of the same problem, the centralization of power. These people who are complaining for two reasons. I got to keep the segment short. One, they're identitarians. So I don't know what economic policy has to do with it. They say, oh, but the historical racism is propped up by capitalism and people who hold wealth and use that to gain more power. Okay, old money exists, but you're not going to solve your problems doing this, by blaming money. Or more importantly, the solution you propose doesn't necessarily solve the issues of social justice. Changing an economic system won't change who is in power. It'll just make sure that those with old money maintain their power and get a stranglehold on it. So ultimately, the point is, they're arguing for either changing the economy because they think it'll be fair. It won't. It'll result in totalitarianism. And they don't understand the concept of private property, or they're just identitarians who are using it as a Trojan horse, or who don't realize it is. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there because I got to keep these short. The point is, the people claiming to be socialists, in my experience, aren't. And they don't even know what socialism is. But anyway, stick around. Next segment will be tomorrow at 10 a.m. Every podcast, 6:30 p.m. on all platforms. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you tomorrow.